just a first comment to let you know this meeting is recorded. I hope you don't mind. So welcome to this LDnet webinar series focusing on recovery through community-led approaches. This is a follow-up on our series of webinars last year, and we've already had the first webinar of the series, which was focusing on the post-COVID world with sharing examples of local development. Here, we're going to focus on communities in circles, solutions for circular economy, and there will be also interesting examples. I just remind you, please switch off your microphones if you're not right now one of the speakers. And I'll pass on to Maria João Rauch, the member of LDnet board, who will lead you through the meeting. Maria João?
Thank you, Ursula. I hope that everybody is hearing me well. This time I did not forget to unmute myself. I am very happy to be here, and especially moderating this thematic that is very interesting, and that is a very future related one, because as we know, circular economy is getting more and more important, and that this pandemic has shown also that is even more important than we thought before. So the circular economy is also a very fertile soil for us to use the community development, because circularity is not only at the level of the use of resources, but it has to be also at the level of collaboration. We need to be also very wide and to involve everybody in these new forms of development that are emerging as a result of environmental problems and also of the pandemic. So it is with great pleasure that I can say we have four really interesting examples to show here. We tried to cover different dimensions of this circularity. The two first examples will be related with soil and with food. So the basic need, let's say, and how can we create new forms of development. And one example that is related because we'll have a recycling of nets of fishermen that are being transformed in products that are sold. And the final example is also how to deal with recycling with the community, using arts and culture as the vehicles to reach the people, as the instruments to develop it. So having said that, I think that I'm going to pass immediately to our first speaker, that is already known here because it's already the second time that she's with us, is Daniela Patti. She is an Urbact expert that is dealing with one transfer network in this moment. And also she has several projects in Italy related with her cooperative. So please, Daniela, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Maria. Hi, everybody. So it's really nice to be here with you this evening. I see some familiar faces, so that's very nice. And some of you I don't know yet. So despite it's in digital with all its limits, it's a nice opportunity to get to speak together. So of all the very large realm that is around circular economy, and we will also have then some very interesting cases presented after. What I will try to share with you is some aspects that are, let's say, umbrella, especially focusing on some of the policy aspects and how policy can be either a result or an enabler of community-led projects. This is what I will try present in 2 cases in a very short time, and I think Maria will be very strict with me on keeping on my time, so I will do my best. So I would like to take you to Rome, where I think that you will be having between me and Fiammetta quite a good overview of Rome today, and to Maribor in Slovenia, with whom I'm working on an urban innovative action project. So if technology is on my side, I will try sharing some images with you to accompany the story, but I would really like to not take it as a proper PowerPoint presentation, but just to have a bit of idea of Rome. So I don't know how many of you have been to Rome. Maybe you can put your hands up on Zoom or something. I don't see you all, so I don't know, but most of you have been, but in the city center. And you probably, unlike in Barcelona, you haven't been to our food markets, despite it being an important asset of the city, because we have 120 food markets in the city of Rome. But most of the food markets nowadays are in the conditions that you see here. Which means that they are in a very derelict situation, despite the incredible potential they have, because they cost very little. They cost approximately a third of what the market price would be of a commercial space in the city, because they come out of a strong idea of having a city food policy that comes already back from the first ones are dating back to the fascist time, so in the 1920s and 1930s, up until the Second World War, but the policy at urban level then continued then later on. But today, this is what we have. And what we started doing together with citizens that were mapping through a project where Peter Ramson was in Urbact at the time, we started mapping with citizens what were the empty or have heavily unused buildings that they thought were very important in their neighborhoods. And surprisingly for us, they mapped a lot of food markets. So this is how we started looking into, and this story with this love story with the markets started. And we started mapping the situation of the markets around Rome. And here what you see is the distribution of the food market. So consider that the diameter of Rome is approximately 50 kilometers. So it's one of the largest municipalities in Europe, but within the ring of the city, the motorway ring, there is a large percentage of the food markets, and those circles that you see, the shades of colors are depending on the typology of markets. So if it's a closed building, if it's sort of gazebos, or if it's those daily markets that are set up and dismantled at the end of the day. And obviously a greater asset are the ones that are either closed or the gazebos, because you have space that you could actually, if it's empty and void, you could reuse in different ways. And what we saw by, these are called isochrones. It's a way of identifying on a walking distance how many people you can reach in a 15-minute diameter from the point of the market. And interestingly enough, I'm sure that even back, and if I'd be curious, you can write it in the chat whether it is like this or not for you. There's a big discussion about the 15-minute city nowadays. In Rome, any place would take you an hour and a half. So because of our mobility, it's a bit like in Cairo. So we're not really strong on that. But surprisingly enough, 1 Roman out of 2 has a market at less than 10 minutes on foot. So it means we have an incredible infrastructure that is heavily unused at the moment. So what we did was that we had a lot of workshops over the last years. We started back in 2014. We had hundreds of workshops over the last years. What has this meant? It has meant to engage local NGOs, the city administration, and especially the vendors that were already present in the market, together with the associations of the merchants, to foster a new regulation. I won't go into all the details, but what is relevant about this is that by doing these workshops where we were bringing all the different stakeholders together, this enabled the possibility of starting some prototypes in the city by changing the regulation over the food market. One of the changes that was relevant was the possibility of having also NGOs and not strictly food and commercial activities happening in the market. And this meant the possibility of a lot of NGOs taking space in the market and running also circular economy projects, especially related to food circularity. And this is something that I think also then in a different way Fiammetta will be talking about, because especially during the COVID, we have seen that there was a huge need for people to access healthy and cheap food. So this projects of circular economy have been particularly relevant because it has meant to bring together the vendors and also, for example, circulate the unused produce to also, for example, have solidarity projects during the pandemics, but also work on composting that was then given to also possibly to the community gardens, of which Fiammetta will be talking about. Now, this is somehow a bottom-up initiative because this has meant people bringing together and making a lot of pressure on the public administration. I would say politically still not enough, but it's a good start. But what I would like to tell you then is this is sort of small scale, from a bottom-up perspective, we can have a series of small scale projects that can be, for example, spaces within the food markets. But when we go on to larger scale, and I would briefly tell you about Maribor and how they have instead a more city-led economy strategy, and obviously managed to get the city on board. And I'd be curious also then from the stories after what the relationship with the city administration was in fostering these projects that obviously need also not only the public administration, but citizens, and especially also companies to work in circular economy projects. Maribor has a series of community gardens, and what the city municipality, what they have been working on is to develop a city strategy for circular economy. What I will be telling you briefly about is the strategy related to the organic waste and how they, by collecting all the organic waste within the city, especially related to the cuttage, for example, of plants and so on, they've been creating soil that could be then recycled also for the community gardens. But this became a city strategy, so a city strategy, which is a prototype which could be applied to also other types of flows within the circular economy. So here what is interesting is we see the different phases related to the circularity of that the city gives itself as a strategy. So you see that what then also in practice will be told also by the colleagues. And what I would like to show you is, and I'm closing with the last image. Okay. Yeah, is I'm keeping track of time, no worries, is exactly what I was telling you about, the importance of being able to intersect the different flows. So by this, the city was able, by its strategy and by the more marginal involvement of the city, but promoting at city level, a series of projects that allowed, for example, to invest with EU funding infrastructure to create, for example, composting centers and so on. So in this story, the citizen engagement is more related to the community gardens, less on the actual development of the projects itself. But obviously the city is able to create a series of infrastructures that allow for the circular economy to actually then take place as a following steps. So this is just a couple of suggestions then put on, and I hope that then they can be also useful for what will be told by the friends after.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Sorry, but as you know, we have limited time. Thank you for this interesting example. And then we go now to Fiammetta, that she is the lead partner of a transfer network in Urbact, and that is related with the use of urban gardens as instruments for social cohesion and for integration of people, and of course, local food also, healthier food. So please, Fiammetta, the floor is yours.
Hello everybody. Thank you, Maria Joao. I ask please Aris to show a short video that can introduce you to our experience of urban gardening as a tool of many things, not only for food, but many things in the city. Please, Aris. The audio, what happened to the audio?
We don't have the sound.
Why? Why the audio? Iris, why there is no audio?
You need to enable the computer audio in the settings of who's projecting the video.
Sorry,
Okay.
I thought I had done it, and I could hear the sound myself. But when
So you have to leave the microphone. You mustn't mute yourself when you show the video.
I should not mute myself. Okay, that's probably the answer. So let's go back and
Let's try again. But if it's if we run out of sound, we'll just have to imagine
no,
we've
I'll take
gone
it
back to the 30s
back.
and the silent film era.
Is this better?
No, I think we're still no sound.
Okay, so if
Maybe
are we sure that we can
let us speak a little bit over the film, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to follow the video somehow.
Sorry, sorry, is
I'll
this
try to do that.
still the same problem?
Yes, the
Yeah,
same
let's-
problem.
I think that Fiametta can comment a little bit over the
Sorry, I'll try again, but the problem is that I get the sound, yeah, my end. So
let's not get stuck on the sound. Fiametta, why don't you tell us a little bit about,
Don't worry. Let's try to do without the sound. Please show the video. I can speak on the video.
Yes, exactly.
okay.
So we don't waste time. It's better. So please start the video again without the sound. I will talk on the video. The project, it's called Urban. We have, it is focused on the phenomenon of urban gardens. It is, but the video is not going.
Fiametta, speak simply and leave the movie go on.
Okay, I will. I don't follow the video maybe because it's.
No, don't follow the video. Simply speak.
I don't follow. Please only speak. So our project is about the phenomenon of urban gardens. The lead partner is Rome, and the other cities are Vilnius, Krakow, Thessaloniki, and then in West Europe, in Caen, Normandy, La Coruña, Spain, and Lores, very close to Lisbona. We have in Rome, we had a very relevant experience of urban gardening because it started since the end of the Second World War, when there was a very big poverty. There was everybody tried to have food somehow, and so the urban gardens started in the city like a spontaneous phenomenon. Then, so it was only for, it seemed to be only for for poor people, not power, poor people. But then in the 60s and 70s, there was an increasing awareness of the importance of this kind of a phenomenon. That was a way to meet people, to share the time, to know each other in the districts, and so it became a stronger phenomenon. And at the very beginning, the administration didn't like it because it was perceived like something that could be how to say that, that could be not easy to manage from the administration, and so there was some there were some contrast, and then at the end of the last century, instead, the phenomenon began to be understood. Then started a collaboration from between the institutions and the citizens. That in the meanwhile, citizens started to be organized not only in a spontaneous way, but also organized with associations managing urban gardens. Urban gardens are mostly on public areas, even if we are trying to get also some the interest of people having private lands, not exactly individual persons, but for instance universities or hospitals who have some lands organized with the urban gardening, urban farming. What happened then? Now we have developed a style, a model that can can work well with the municipality. We have a regulation for how to give lands, plots to people. Better if they are association and not individuals, because it's easier to manage. It's easier that they can have they can assure a sustainability in terms of time, for instance. Because this is one problem, that people then maybe after one year they get tired, they are old very often. So it's important to be an association, because it is it's assured a sustainability in time. But the very important, relevant thing is that this is not only a tool for self-production of vegetables, that is important anyway, but also it is a tool for the inclusion, social inclusion, for also therapeutical goals. For, of course, for needy people who can have something for whom can be very, very important to have food for free. Then for the weak subjects, for instance, migrants, also disabled people who are happy to be together, to share methods, time, work, and then at the end even, of course, products, vegetables. They are mostly for self-consumption, and or exceeding the production is destinated not to the markets, but to associations for who take care of needy people. And then there is another aspect very relevant, that urban gardens very often are in Rome in some areas that were abandoned areas. So this means that through this tool, urban gardens, we can have we can share to be don't let that areas are in a decade. The community gardens are very important for active citizenship, And this is another important thing, because there are many chance to have a bottom-up process. This bottom-up process means that things are more understandable, more acceptable, and also rules are more acceptable if coming from the bottom. This is what is the Rome experience. This experience was transferred in the cities I told you before. To underline the experience with Krakow, because Krakow was yes.
Can we do it in 1 minute, please?
Yes, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Krakow, yes, sure. 2 minutes. Yes. Krakow was had no experience of this kind of, because they told of themselves that they have a big lack of trust. They don't have associations. They don't want to be together on something. But now they, after seeing this experience, they started to organize themselves and to learn how to stay together and to share experience. And the last thing I want to underline is that in Krakow, they suggested to the schools that is something that doesn't exist in Rome. This is very important, very, very relevant. They tried to ask schools to organize their own gardens. And so there are 18 schools in Krakow now in the last year who have a garden, and the students take care of the vegetables, so growing the vegetables and sharing this experience. And this is a very, very big result. I think that my time is over.
So thank you very much, Fiammetta, for this interesting example, and sorry for this small issue, but this is
it happens sometimes. Don't worry.
Okay, so without further time, please, Richard, can you bring us then your example of fisheries and recycling of nets?
Hello, everybody. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Is it full screen? Is it, just to check? Because I'm a bit of problem with that.
It's not full screen, Richard. It's kind of
How about now?
partial. Yeah, now it's good.
That's great.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. My name is Richard. I work for ADO, European Association for Information on Local Development. Mainly, I work on the FarNet Support Unit contract with Ursula, I'm sure you all know very well. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you today about one of our flag project examples, which is called Fill and Fab, and that's from the Brest flag region in France. So just to give you a kind of a bit of context and a bit of background, what the project does is they recycle old fishing nets into new plastic products. So just a bit of a background here. Estimates suggest that between 80 and 99% of new products are no longer in use 6 months after being produced. So this is all part of kind of our consumer economy, whereby we just keep buying stuff and throwing it away at an exponential rate. Just a different kind of take on the circular economy, which was in one of our guides. And the circular economy with regards to kind of raw materials aims to move closer to the circular processes we find in nature, whereby one species is kind of broken down and used by another kind of food chains, if you like, just to give you.
Richard, sorry, your voice is going on and off. Sometimes we cannot hear you too well. It's like you were speaking sometimes to a microphone and sometimes not. Can you make sure that it's...
Okay, sorry, I have my headset on. How's that?
Check that your jack is properly into the computer, because it sounds like a connection.
It is.
Okay.
you want me to keep going, or should I try without the jet?
Keep going, just don't move your head.
Okay, I'll try and do that. Yeah, so yeah, it's on that slide. So I don't think anyone is kind of mentioned these. These are quite well-known kind of examples. So we have the linear economy on the left-hand side, whereby we have raw materials which go through production use and then end up in landfill. In the case we're talking about in France, the vast majority of fishing nets typically end up in landfill or as marine in the ocean as waste. So after that, we then have the reuse economy, which kind of goes some way to rectifying that, whereby we recycle materials into new production and then use. But ultimately, that still ends up in kind of landfill or in the ocean or as waste somewhere. So the circular economy kind of tries to move totally away from that and removes the input of raw materials. So we kind of have this constant cycle going around where you have a material that maybe you shouldn't have produced in the first place, like plastics. When instead of putting them into landfill or letting them go to waste, we kind of keep reusing them into new things. Fishing nets being one example. So the project, Fill and Fab, it's from the Brest region in France, as we mentioned, and it recycles fishing nets into a recycling ecosystem, if you like, in that region. It was started as a project by 3 design students at a local institute. And they used old fishing nets to make some new shoes. That was the initial project. Based on that, they wanted to expand that, and it became funded by the flag with an EMFF contribution of €70,000. And ultimately, what they've done is they've created a whole ecosystem for recycling plastic nylon fishing nets in the region into new products. So that's the 3 of them there. To show you those. And a little bit of a quote from them, from the idea of making recycled objects on their design project to students. They've ended up creating a network which has managed to regenerate the local area and economy to some extent. Their vision, just quickly, is to tackle ecological issues and protect the marine environment. So, as we mentioned, to stop things going into the ocean as waste. And to increase the area's capacity to provide solutions on their own scale. Typical bottom-up approaches. So they want to do instead of normally waste when it goes to landfill from France or most countries in Europe, it kind of goes very far away in these huge chains. So it's taking a local approach to doing something about their own waste to local actors. So here's some images from the project. So just to give you a quick idea of how it works, the fishermen collect waste from the sea, or they have their own nets which are no longer usable. There's only a certain lifespan of fishing nets before they stop working and no longer viable. They then have a series of collection sites in different ports in the Brest region where fishermen deposit their nets that are no longer in use. Here they're kind of sorted into different types, which you can see in this top right image. And then ultimately they're took to a facility where they're kind of broken down. John, to that in a second. Just quickly, this is the Brest region. So these are all of the different ports. And these are some 2021 estimates of the scale of the fishing nets that actually they want to collect this year. In 2020, last year, it was a total of 100 tons, but you can see that's going to go up this year with these amounts by port. So here's the product, this stuff, these little pellets at the bottom there. Used fishing nets, so the nylon fishing nets, which is this little bit at the top, they're cleaned and shredded down, so you remove everything like the rope, the buoys, all of the different bits, and ultimately they're kind of broken down into a plastic sheet and then turned into these pellets which they've trademarked and called nylon, this little tiny small pellets. Now, interestingly, these little pellets are what you'd start off to use fishing nets in the first place. So I'll come back to that when we talk about circular economy later. So nylon, this material that they break the nets down into, it's made entirely from fishing nets. It's a polyamide granule, which, as I just said, is what you kind of use to make fishing nets in the first place. There's no dyes or additives added to this thing once they've processed it. And from that, they can use this material to make a whole host of plastic products. As I said, they make shoes, they make bags, but it can also go into a multitude of different things. So a couple of quotes just to finish off from them as to go back to the circular economy. What they're trying to do is they've produced these pellets, which is what you'd initially make fishing nets from. So by producing those pellets, they've kind of gone back to the raw material, the input that was there. So it's kind of a full cycle using the plastic through the nets, then bring it into a new product and back round. But what they do is when they design new products is they keep kind of sustainability in mind through the design process. So good product design considers the entire product life cycle and reduces the need for additional raw materials. So the idea is with the products that they make is that ultimately you can turn those back down or reduce those back into these nylon pellets and keep going. So the cycle just keeps going around. You keep making new products all of the time. Of course, there's flaws there because if you or I buy a pair of shoes from them, what's to say we're going to recycle that properly? But it's about kind of getting this. It came from one place, this idea of the circular economy, and therefore the person buying it tends to have that sustainability in mind, and then ultimately we keep creating these cycles. And just quickly to touch upon the ecosystem that they've created. So they have a series of partners. They have the fishermen involved. They have a local social enterprise involved, and all of these different hubs around the area where the products can be collected, sourced, and kind of broken down into this nylon material. It's all done in the one area. So it brings together the community in this huge effort to kind of, one, reduce plastic waste going into landfill and going into the ocean, but also to do something useful with it at the end. So yeah, that brings us back to the first slide where I had the images of the.
Thank you, Richard. It was very interesting. Thank you very much. And to finalize this series of interesting examples, we have Célia Laranjeira from the city of Agda in the north of Portugal. And we will begin with one video, and afterwards Célia will tell us about their experience. Aris, can we begin with the video, please? Can we have it in big? Okay. Aris, if there is any problems there, I can ask Célia to do it.
Well, I'm not sure. There is a problem which I don't know what it is.
Okay, so then Célia, could you please bring the video in?
Okay, I'll try.
Thank you.
You should allow me to share the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get out of that.
A Câmara Municipal de Agda é parceira do projeto Sea Change. O objetivo é replicar o modelo desenvolvido por Manchester, no Reino Unido, mobilizando em Agda os setores de arte e cultura, contribuindo deste modo com ações locais que procuram sensibilizar para as alterações climáticas e, consequentemente, a redução das emissões de CO2.
Este é um projeto que preconiza um plano de ação em rede, liderado por Manchester. Já tivemos aqui a participação de vários artistas, como Bordal II, desta obra que se encontra aqui atrás de mim, que foi também ela criada com os lixos e os reutilização de lixos que as crianças num projeto de rede e num projeto de residências estiveram a participar durante uma semana. A AGDA está mais uma vez na linha e nestes trabalhos em rede internacionais que nos vão permitir sensibilizar os grupos de trabalho e os cidadãos da AGDA para a reutilização dos lixos e, portanto, para nós é importante, já com boas práticas temos vindo a tomar, nomeadamente nos copos reutilizados que utilizamos no Agitagda, com os chapéus que parece que não, também criam aquela sombra nas ruas da cidade e criam uma sensação de frescura e que as pessoas acabam por sentir bem, mas que são reutilizados também após o Agitagda, após o evento. Este é o nosso contributo, é procurar pouco a pouco e buscando materiais que sejam cada vez mais reutilizáveis para outras funções, para outras atividades. Portanto, é um projeto que vamos continuar a trabalhar para que no final todos possamos estar mais sensibilizados para questões ambientais.
So in total, there are 6 cities in the project. Manchester is the lead city based on the work that it's been doing over the last 7 years. And we have AGDA, obviously, and 4 other city partners, which are Wrocław in Poland, Mantova in Italy, Gelsenkirchen in Germany, and Šibenik in Croatia. I think it's, so Sea Change is a fantastic project which is bringing climate change and climate action and culture together. And what we've seen in AGDA has been very inspiring of how already you have such great activity in the cultural area and the environmental area. And Sea Change is helping really to make the connection between the two things. And it's such a perfect fit for AGDA because you are such a creative city, and it's a way to, Sea Change is really a way to help take more action on climate change through culture and to inspire people to take action themselves in your city. And we're also really excited to be here at the time of Agit AGDA to see culture happening in the city and to bring this climate change action into the whole process.
Okay, Celia?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Great presentations. This project occurs because an invitation, of course, from Urbact, and we're very, very happy to be accepted because AGDA is one of the most sustainable cities of Portugal, and we work towards adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And this project was quite a challenge because when we speak about environment, when we speak about climate change, about waste management, usually are the specialists, are the people with the degree on environmental engineering, biology, who speak to the people who try to raise awareness in order for people to change their behaviors. And sometimes it's difficult for us to speak a different language, to use different materials in order to make different approaches in our community, in our schools, in our companies, in our associations, and of course in our cultural sector. And this project gave us, with the leadership of Manchester, gave us new approaches, new ways of doing and speaking about environmental. We brought culture to the environmental awareness sessions, as you could see on the video, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing the video because I think it quite allows you to understand the work that has been made. So the cultural sector were the ones who were talking to people, to the community of climate change, of what they could do to to promote a safer environment with less carbon emissions, in order to save energy, to reduce the production or waste. And when you produce the waste and you don't know what to do with it, the cultural sector, our ULG group, show to everyone, even to our political decisors, that it was possible to do new things, new projects, new urban art sculptures with that trash that no longer had life, no longer could be used. So it was this experience that we exchange with all the partners, because different cities have different approaches, different problems, and we learn each other from the experiences and from the work that has been developed. For example, in Croatia, they have a very interesting project about an island that is zero plastic. So that I think this is quite an ambitious project, and it's something that we are working on, at least in our next events, in order to make sure that there also will be zero plastic. So nowadays, with this ULG, and despite COVID, the pandemic, COVID, and all the restrictions, and all the adaptation that we had to do to our program, to the activities that we had in our appliance. The ULG group, the ULG, it's the ULG group. It's a group of people within the cultural and environmental sector that combine together in order to speak about different themes, to exchange ideas, to even develop projects together. So these people didn't give up despite all the restrictions, and keep on working in social media and in the network, developing ideas, projects, in order to nowadays start the implementation. AGDA, also within the project of the Sea Change and with the Urbact financing, promoted a contest of ideas. We call it the Agents of Change, because sometimes we usually speak about the themes and tell people, oh, you should change, all these empiric themes and ideas, but what do we want? We want people to take action. We want people, communities, to understand that they can make the difference. So this contest, this Agents of Change, it was a contest in order to the persons from the cultural sector and even other associations, they could propose new projects, new ideas, in order to, through the culture, through culture activities, approach the themes of environment and do quite practical and specific work within our local community. So it was quite a challenge, and it worked very well because we have amazing ideas. The project, I think I could have a minute. Do I have a minute, Maria João? So just to explain the project that won, it was an astronaut that came to the planet Earth. So we were abroad, we were the foreigners, and he came back from the future, and it was in our streets and approaching people, approaching families to tell them how they should save the planet. And this, it occurred in a quite interesting time. It was a coincidence, but there are no coincidences. This project was yelled, it was implemented in the streets, specifically in the week in which we land on Mars. So it was quite a message. On the day that we land on Mars, we are talking in AGDA, or we were talking in AGDA, how to save the Earth. So all this combined together, this was an amazing project, an amazing experience that we hope to continue to share. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Celia. It was great. So please, Peter, for the question and answers.
We don't have so much time left as we normally do, because we messed up with our video at the beginning, but no problem. I'm picking up a couple of comments from different people, and I just want to see if we can build on them a little bit. Kirsten from Denmark, you mentioned about gardening, that in Denmark there is an example of school gardens. Can you just tell us a little bit about how those are organized? Because everywhere has schools, and presumably everywhere could do something more with children around that whole theme. So I don't know if you're still there, but if you are, can you unmute and just tell us a little bit about how it works in Denmark?
The gardens for schools for kids and youngsters is done by the 4-H, which I believe you have in many countries. It's a 100-year-old organization, and we have a tradition for that. So we just stick to that tradition, that we know that kids want to find out how are vegetables grown and where can I keep my rabbits or calf or whatever. So it's actually small farms, mini farms, and it's allowed also during COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so then I misunderstood. They're not directly linked to schools, but obviously children are. I know that in Athens there has been some attempts to develop gardening within the context of school gardens, of school grounds, but yes, I hadn't heard of 4-H, so that's a new one on me. We had a comment from someone saying how wonderful it was to have the full cycle for the flags, and just so you're aware, the sorry, we have some acronyms creeping in, but flags are fisheries local action groups, and they're actually quite similar in concept to the URBAC local group, the ULG that Celia mentioned. So there's a sort of, and this isn't accidental. These the URBAC practice was developed out of LEADER. In fact, we looked across when we drew up the idea of how action plans could be developed. We looked at how the 3,000 or so LEADER and the way LEADER networks organized. I've got a comment here coming in from Peter Lloyd, and I wondered if you wanted to develop it. You're talking about the sort of cultural and geographic specificities, and which ones are specific and which ones are generic. I'd have thought arts, environment, and gardens are perhaps all generic, but you might want to comment on that, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Good to meet some old friends again. I'm still alive.
Good for you. Good for you.
I was reaching for, lovely to listen to this stuff. It takes me back to when I used to do it. But the thing is, I'm looking for structures in what goes on, and some of it is very transferable. I think the arts and culture, and I've seen a lot of the work from OECD on this, plus the climate stuff is very transferable. It's that you can make a movement out of that at one end of the scale. I think those gardens and the local, the sort of stuff we've seen from Rome and we saw in the previous one, it's the sort of thing you've got to have a city like that and a culture like that. You can't do that in Salford. There are certain places where you can do stuff and where you can't. But the creative act is to see what you can trade that you could do in different urban environments. And then the fishing one, that was very specific. And there's a big move here in the UK to develop stuff on coastal communities generally, including what I put in just now, beach schools, to actually, to take the coastal strip and endow it with stuff. So I was very impressed with that. I've just been an old academic. I'm just looking for structures in the middle of this wonderful storytelling.
Okay. Thanks very much, Peter. No, it's good to have, and I see what you mean about fishing is specific to fishing communities, whereas the others are more easily transferable. On the question of transfer, Jana Oikarinen has asked a question about international cooperation. Jana, can you just explain, if you're still on, what you meant by your question? Clearly, they're having some of these are already transferring within the context of Europe. And I don't know if you're still there, but unmute if you are and join in.
Hello. Yes,
Hi,
I
hi.
am here. Yes.
Good to hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking all these projects, if you have some good experiences about international cooperation, like some good tips, or how did you find your partner, or etc.
Okay, let's ask the ones that are involved directly in cooperation. I think for Richard, they are actually encouraged, because he works for AIDL, which is a social enterprise consultancy. They're using diffusion of ideas to spread. I'm taking words from your mouth, but I wondered if Celia and perhaps Daniela or Fiammetta can say a little bit about how you get together, how you build these projects. And clearly they're EU funded, so that oils the wheels. But perhaps Daniela and Fiammetta, and then finish with Celia. Don't forget to unmute.
So maybe I can say first just a few things. I think obviously you have to identify the local partners and the international partners. I think for the local partners, that's usually the key, is the fact of identifying real projects where you're really having people on board, not just to inform them of what you're doing, but really a sort of co-decision, co-design phase with the key stakeholders and with the citizens at large. And so this is also what Fiammetta also was saying, for example, of also the work that they've done in Rome. When you're talking about international partners, that's always the tricky thing, because you want to find people that are really committed to the same mission that you have, and you want to have a really fruitful exchange. I think one of the things that is the most useful is to reach out to people that are already doing things in the same field. And I think there are plenty of websites on good practices and stories and journals. It can be Urbact. I've been putting some links on our magazine, Cooperative City. You're all welcome to take a look at it and share stories also from what you're doing. But I think any of these platforms are a good thing, because if people are already doing something similar to what you're doing, usually there would be good local partners to team up with, my opinion. I don't know what Fiammetta and the others might think about that.
Just quickly for the last, we'll go 3 or 4 minutes over time, but just a short couple of sentences, Fiammetta.
Just very shortly, for us it was very challenging to find partners in very different situations, from the historical point of view, from the cultural and the social point of view. This is why we looked for in Lithuania and in Poland, but then also in Spain and in France and in Portugal. And it was very relevant because we wanted to try to transfer this urban gardens in very different situations. And excuse me, just the last thing about the COVID, it's interesting that the request of the citizens in Rome interested in having land to cultivate in an urban garden have increased during COVID time by about 30%. And this trend started during the lockdown, when, although with restrictions, citizens were allowed to continue to cultivate their land. And the half of this new request came from young people, 20 years old, 30 years old.
That's really great. That's really good. One thing I just wanted to quickly mention is that Urbact started out really doing in the 2003, looking at where cities would visit each other, they'd learn about each other, but there wasn't a sort of action orientation. And now with these new transfer networks, which have been developed in the current funding period from 2014 to 20, for the first time, there's now a mechanism for actually deliberatively transferring practices from one place to another. And I think you're seeing some of the results in 2 of these examples, from Agda and from Rome, and obviously Krakow as well, and Manchester. So I think it's an interesting thing, perhaps for the rural and coastal people, to see how a methodology can be developed for actually deliberately transferring practices. I'm just going to bring in Celia to answer the same question that the other 2 answered. Celia.
Yes, I think the main challenge for all of us is teamwork, even within our organizations and even within our associations and companies. But when you are talking about teamwork, because this is all about this project, the URBAC, the exchange of experiences, you should have a great communication, and I think that it goes very well when you launch an invitation to your community, and that was one of our main concerns, the number of people who would embrace this project, and we were worried about it because our partners have a lot of companies and associations within the cultural sector that were already working. We are talking about 20, 30 representatives, and we are quite a small city, and we were very concerned about it. But when you have a path that or someone has already trailed, someone has already walked, you have learned lessons, and that it was very easy for us because all our partners, this is the teamwork, they brought us the knowledge of the mistakes that they have made earlier, and allow us to take a step forward and allow us to start in a point ahead, and avoiding the same mistakes that they commit when they start the project. And I think this was a major success because they were very helpful, they were very friendly, and we just have to thank everyone, and it was a great experience.
Okay, thanks very much. We're very much out of time. We started a couple of minutes late, so I think we're allowed to just go for a couple more minutes. I'm going to hand back. Thank you very much for the questions and the comments from people and from our speakers. I'm just going to remind you that there's the third and last thematic one of these next Thursday at 6 o'clock, which is focusing on exclusions, and which I am curating. I'm just going to hand back to Maria, who's going to make some concluding comments, and then it'll be over and out by about 6 minutes past. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Peter. So I would like only to highlight that when we speak here about communities in circles and new forms of development, I think that we could find here common traces in all these examples. And in all of them, we saw that it was on the basis of collaborative work at local level from the communities and emerging from the communities that it was possible to develop out of the box new solutions. So I think that this is fundamental, and all these examples prove that in the most different perspectives and in the most different dimensions, it is always possible to do it. And the community is really the central element. So I would not like to go much further. I want also to thank everybody for this interesting webinar and for all the contributions, and also to our speakers that I thank very much for accepting this challenge. And I hope to see you all again next week. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.